Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our February Crime Craft. We're here tonight with Jerri Williams. Jerri, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Happy to be here.
Let me just tell you all a little bit about Jerri. Jerri Williams is a retired FBI agent, author, and podcaster. She served 26 years as a special agent specializing in economic fraud and corruption cases. She's now on a mission to show the public who the FBI is and what the FBI does. Jerri was recognized by the FBIAA in 2021 as their G-Man Honors Distinguished Service honoree for her work sharing FBI stories through her books, blog, and true crime podcast, FBI Case File Review. 2026 marks her 10th anniversary hosting and producing the show that has over 385 episodes. Jerri has also authored 4 books. Drawing from her firsthand experience investigating scams and schemers, she writes police procedurals inspired by true crime. FBI cases in her Philadelphia FBI Corruption Squad crime fiction series. Her nonfiction FBI for Armchair Detective series debunks misconceptions about the FBI found in books, TV, and movies. Because of her previous work as a spokesperson for the Philadelphia division and her research on how the entertainment industry depicts the FBI, she has worked as a consultant for major TV studios, assisting producers and showrunners in developing realistic FBI characters and storylines. You can learn more about Jerri and her creative work at jerriwilliams.com. I'll also put that in the chat. Jerri, again, welcome. So excited to have you here tonight. You have so generously put together a handout for us. So if anyone is interested in getting that handout, please just put your email in the chat. Or actually, I'll put my email in the chat. You can email me and I will send everyone the handout. How does that sound?
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay, terrific. So, Jerri, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you. I have to say, this is really exciting for me. I was mentioning this before we started that the very first time I gave this presentation was to the New York chapter of Mystery Writers of America. Back in, it was I think it might have been 2018. I came up to New York. I was living in South Jersey at the time, and I took the train up and I went to the meeting and I spoke, and it was exciting. And I actually recorded it. And later on, that recording became my book that I wrote about my presentation, which is FBI Myths and Misconceptions. So this is like full circle for me. So I'm real excited. And one of the things, the whole purpose of my presentation is the fact that what most people know about the FBI, they get from books, TV, and movies. Most people have never met an FBI agent, which is a good thing for many people, and a bad thing if you're a writer who wants to write stories about the FBI. So, what they learn about the FBI, they learn by reading other books and watching movies and TV shows. But what if those things are wrong? That means that your book, the story that you're creating, is going to get it wrong too. And so, what I did is to start thinking about what are those cliches that I always see? Because I read a lot of crime fiction, I watch a lot of crime dramas, and I would see them all the time. As a matter of fact, in my podcast, which was mentioned, I've been doing for 10 years now. I'll be posting episode 388 tomorrow. We often talk about different cases and what we see that people get wrong about it. And so by doing that podcast, that's when I created, and this is the handout that you'll get, the FBI reality checklist. We came up with these 20 cliches, which I turned into a book that actually matches the cliches with movies and books and TV shows, so you can get a real understanding of why that cliche is out of date and not realistic. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. Because of the TV show, because of the podcast and the books, I have been contacted by major studios. These are just two of the shows that I worked on directly with the executive producers, Rob Tom Smith on the class of '09, and got to drop the name, J.J. Abrams and LaToya Morgan on Duster. And I was part of the team for both of these shows while the scripts were being written. And so I was working with them directly uh, on story ideas, on what was happening, and just giving them a realistic. Like I would read something they would write, and I would say, "That's not exactly how it goes," and then they may massage the writing a little bit to make it more realistic, and it was a lot of fun. And I just wish that Duster had been picked up again. We only had one season because I had a contract to work for every season, but they got caught up in the um, renegotiation between Max and HBO, and the people that were behind the show were gone, and you know how that is. It's almost like losing, your editor. As you know, it just even though you have a really good series and things are, everybody loves it, the person that was behind it leaves, and so that show is gone. But it was such a fun opportunity. As I go through this presentation, the most important thing is your story. So, yeah, I'm going to tell you things that are cliches, things that don't make any sense, and that's not how it really works in the FBI. But if you're writing a story and you feel that you need to have something in your plot or have your character do something because it's what your story needs, then don't worry about it. You know, the main thing that you want to check on is if what you've written is going to stop somebody from reading. If it's going to give somebody, it's going to throw somebody out of the story when they say, "Oh, wait a minute, that's not how it works." That's the most important thing for you is to remember as you're writing, if you are going to do something that is not really the way it works, will it stop your reader from wanting to continue on? Or even if they just momentarily escape from the story or leave the story, you really don't want that either. So it's a way of getting an understanding of what really works for the FBI and what really works for your story. Because I have two TV shows right here, The X-Files and Fringe, that threw everything out the window. We know that there is no X-Files, at least I didn't know anything about it while I was an FBI agent, but that show was a hit. And Fringe, which is another J.J. Abrams show, I don't know if many people have seen it, but it also is more of a science fiction show, and they throw everything that really happens in the FBI out of the window too. But they both work. They both work. I enjoyed watching both of those shows. So you have to use the information that I'm going to give you, for the good of your story. All right. So why don't we talk a little bit about some of these cliches? All right. The first one is about FBI profilers. So many times when you're looking at an FBI book, series, or a TV show or a movie, it's about serial killers. Matter of fact, I think probably 50% of books, TV shows, and movies about the FBI are about serial killers and FBI profilers. And this is an example where the cliche that was perpetrated by Thomas Harris and the Silence of the Lambs have kind of taken over the reality because FBI profilers are not running down dark alleys. They're not in dank, musty basements looking for serial killers. They are consultants. All right. So I'm sure everyone has seen that movie. And it started what I call a whole genre of books and TV shows and movies about serial killers and FBI profilers. But again, they're not chasing serial killers, down the street. FBI profilers are consultants. They're actually more of consultants and academics, where when there is a crime, whether it's a murder or a missing person, a kidnapping, and it seems unstoppable or unsolvable, then the investigators, whether they be FBI agents or they be, police detectives from around the world, they'll come to the FBI Academy, they'll give their file, all the evidence that they've acquired at that point, and that profiler will go through that material, trying to assist them with who may have done the crime or where their victim may be, hidden. So that's really how it works. But again, it's a whole genre now. And so there are so many books and TV shows and movies about FBI profilers, and they're all out on the street doing the investigation as opposed to them being consultants for the actual investigator. Now, I say that, but there's also Mindhunter, the best-selling book by FBI retired FBI agent and profiler John Douglas, and the excellent TV show that came from the book, that was adapted from the book. More realistic look at what a profiler looks like. I'm giving you that information, but really, it's just for you to know because I think if you were to write a thriller about an FBI profiler and you kept him or her in the office at Quantico, the book probably wouldn't do very well, but at least you know. At least you know. The reality is that the FBI is very respectful of their law enforcement partners. I mean, you can see that now in the Nancy Guthrie investigation, which is all over the news, where the FBI was invited to assist with the investigation, but the sheriff in that town outside of Tucson is in charge. We are working with them, working together as a team to return Nancy Guthrie and find out what happened to her. The other concept is the task force. The FBI has had JTTS, which is the Joint Terrorism Task Force. They have had the Violent Crime Task Force. They've had Child Predator Task Force, where they're working together with local law enforcement and state law enforcement. Uh, I don't know how that cliche was established, but it definitely is out there. So, and I know why. It's, when you're writing a crime novels, especially a thriller, you want that tension, you want that drama, and creating this animosity between your FBI agent character and your police character or your private detective kind of gives you an easy way of having that tension and drama. But it is not accurate. It's a cliche and it's getting kind of old. And I'm one of those persons when I see it, I roll my eyes and turn my head and, question whether or not I want to continue reading that book or watching that TV show. So, number three, as far as cliches, are that most FBI agents are white males and female agents are single. I kind of put this one tongue in cheek because most FBI agents are white males. There's about 70% minorities in the FBI. I think African Americans make up about 5%. African American females make up less than 1% of agents in the FBI. So it's still very much when you are an FBI agent and you're a woman or a minority that you may be one of the only ones in the room. Now, as far as female agents are single, that is a cliche. And again, I think that cliche is there because it's much easier to have a female FBI character without and I'm sorry to use this word, but baggage of having a family and having kids. You can have her go places and do things, and she doesn't have to worry about, who's going to pick the kid up from daycare. And you can have a male character. Of course, he has a spouse at home that will do that for him. But I want to make sure that people looking into creating a female FBI agent character, that the women in the FBI are just as likely to be married and to have children as the male characters. And I know in my books, the two that have been published, and the two are one that is on submission right now. Family and children is a very important part of my character, and it helps again when we talked about creating problems for your character. And I hate to keep saying that husbands and kids and spouses are problems, but that creating that tension and that drama, that's a way of being able to do that with your story. So don't necessarily take the easy way out by having your female characters be single all the time. All right. Next cliche is that the FBI only hires accountants, attorneys, police, and military officers. I don't know what the percentage is, but maybe 20% are accountants and attorneys, and maybe another 20% have had prior military or law enforcement experience. But there are so many people coming in from the FBI that were teachers. I mean, like high school teachers, people who ran their own businesses, people that are nurses, doctors. There are just a variety of different job experience that the FBI is looking for. I've actually heard recruiters say, don't major. If you're a college student and you want to become an FBI agent, don't major in criminal justice. Major in anything else because that makes you a little bit more versatile and not having to compete with those people that may have had prior law enforcement or military experiences. Uh, this, though, is one of the things that really irritates me when people get one thing wrong. And you have to be between the age of 23 and have not reached your 37th birthday when you become an FBI agent, when you're hired. There are some waivers that you can get for prior military service. But this show, Rookie Feds, I never could watch it because the whole premise of the show was that she was 48 years old and she had been a high school counselor, which was very plausible, but she was 48 years old when she became an FBI agent. And I thought, oh, the person who wrote that script, who was producing that show, didn't even do the basics of research because you can't join the FBI when you're 48. Most people cannot be 37 years old, and that's because we have a mandatory retirement at 57, and you have to have at least 20 years before you're eligible for retirement. And so this is an example of somebody wrote this script, wrote this TV show, and many FBI agents, many people in federal law enforcement can't watch it because they know that it is just implausible. She could not have been joining the FBI at age 48. And so this is an example of where somebody could be taken out of the story. Is everybody still there?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh
great.
yes, we're all here. This is
Yep.
fascinating, Jerry. Thank you so
Oh,
much. Yeah,
all
this
right.
is so
Hey,
so so good.
what if somebody has worked in the mailroom and then they wanted to become an agent? That wouldn't be possible at age 38.
It would not be possible.
Okay.
Again, there are a few waivers for, let's just say you were a Secret Service agent and you wanted to become an FBI agent and you were over 37. You could do that because we're in the same 1811 series hiring program. So you can just transfer your time in Secret Service to the FBI. But anyone else without those prior federal law enforcement experience or certain waivers for certain types of military, like maybe you're an HRT or you're a Green Beret or a SEAL or something like that, you may be able to get a waiver. But just the average person, no, we do not hire anyone. There are people who have been in the application process and something happened. Maybe they got sick or they broke their leg, and by the time they were back into the recruitment, phase, they realize that this person is not going to get in before their 37th birthday, and their application process is terminated. So, no, you cannot.
Thank you, Jerry.
You're welcome. All right. So, number five, one agent can work a major investigation alone. And again, I understand why you'll see that in certain, books and TV shows. But the reality is that there is a case agent, and you would be absolutely amazed at the autonomy of a case agent. That I look at it as if you're running a business. And that case agent can decide what time the business opens, what time of the day the business will close, how many employees they want to have, what kind of inventory they need. So basically, as a case agent, if you want to come in late because you have an interview later in the day, that's your choice. If you need to get additional people from your squad or from other sections in your particular office to assist you with your case, you can go out and get those people to assist you. If you need to buy equipment and other resources, that is your job to figure out what you need to investigate your case, and then to go to your supervisors and your managers to explain to them what you need. And it's their job to make sure that you get it. So yes, as a case agent, they are absolutely in charge of their case. And I know from this TV show, FBI, which I don't watch a lot, I did blog every season of the first every episode of the first season. So I think I did like 23 blog posts on each show to kind of show listeners and or people who are watching the show what they got right, what they got wrong. But one of the things on that show is that oh, I can't even think of his name right now. Whatever his name is, the ASAC he's supposed to be. He kind of directs the agents whatever they're doing, and that's really not the way it works. I mean, the case agent really is in charge of their own cases, and they'll come to their ASAC, assistant special agent in charge, or their supervisor to get those additional resources that they need, but they're really in charge. This other show, C-18 FBI, was back in the 80s, I believe, really was an excellent show, probably, before its time. It really shows how cases are investigated. And I recommend it. I'm sure it's streaming someplace, but it really kind of shows you how a case is investigated. And of course, if you want to know how cases are investigated, you can always listen to my podcast. Again, I have 388 episodes as of tomorrow, and I look at one case at a time. And for example, I mentioned before the Nancy Guthrie case. We already reviewed a case from the early 2000s where an 88-year-old woman was kidnapped for ransom. And just listening to that can give you an idea of how that investigation is going, especially if you decided now, with that, what's going on in current events, that you might want to write a thriller about that. Just listening to that episode will give you lots of ideas of how things really work. So you don't have to depend on a TV show that might get it all wrong when you can actually listen to the case agent, break down the case and tell you how it's done. All right. Agents are unemotional and have no sense of humor. And interrupt me if you have a question or a comment having to do with the particular cliche that I have up. But agents are unemotional and have no sense of humor. Again, My podcast is free to you, so I'm not trying to sell the podcast for any other reason as to it being an excellent resource for people writing about the FBI. And I think when you listen to some of those case reviews, you understand why this is a cliche. I have grown men crying and grown women crying, and as they talk about their emotional connection with the victims and even sometimes the subjects of their investigation, but they also laugh and joke about, some of the things that are done to kind of relieve some of that stress and some of that tension when you are working, a case, 24 hours, 7 days a week, trying to get somebody returned to their family or to stop a drug dealer or organized crime. And so it's definitely a situation where that these special agents are just like you and me and have feelings and empathy for not just the victims, but also in some situations the subjects of their investigations. This was a funny movie. I don't know if you saw that, but Corky Romano, it's pretty cute. All right, Undercover Agent. So this is a good one because there are a number of stories that are about undercover agents. And it always gives the impression that the undercover agent is running the case. I hate to say it this way, but it makes sense to say that an undercover agent is a tool, not in a negative way, but in a way of being used to help with the investigation or resource. The case agent is still managing the case. The case agent is still in charge of the case, and they reach out and decide to utilize the services of an undercover agent when everything they've done to gather the evidence that they need hasn't produced the evidence that they were hoping to, that they may even have an informant. That informant for some reason is not getting the information or is not trusted enough in order to gather the information that they need. And so they'll actually hire an FBI agent, agents who have been trained at the undercover school, who have listed their skill sets. And so the case agent may go to the undercover program and say, look, I'm looking for somebody who can, insert themselves into a domestic terrorism or can insert themselves into organized crime or can, be a stockbroker in order for me to be able to get the information and gather the evidence I need. And so undercover agents, although they may appear to be in charge, they are getting their instructions from the case agent in a particular case. They're important to the case, but they're not running the show. All right, there is one central database. And again, I hate to keep picking on the TV show FBI, but they are notorious. And I guess it's because their shows are episodic, that it begins and ends on that 1 hour. So that case has to be investigated and concluded and solved in 1 hour. I wish it was that easy. That you could go to a simple database and find out all of that information. The reality is, none of that is kept in one place. You might have NCIC, which is the National Computer Information Center, where all of the historical information about someone's criminal history may be kept. Educational information, maybe in another place. You may have to go to individual universities or high schools to gather that. Military information is another place. Medical information is in yet another database. And many of these type of information, you're going to need a search warrant in order to acquire, but they make it look so easy. I wish it was true. All right, number 9, agents use intimidation and threats during an interrogation. Well, let me first explain to you the difference between an interview and an interrogation. An interview is where you're gathering information. So you may just be talking to somebody. It could still be your subject, and you're just trying to gather information. An interrogation is where you're trying to get a confession. So you may initially be interviewing a subject, and they say something or do something that makes you realize that this is your person, and that interview now becomes an interrogation. And whether you need to give them read them their rights or not depends on whether they're in custody, whether they feel that they can leave, or that they're are being detained, is the difference. But threats and intimidation, as you see them on TV, never work. These are tough, bad guys, and yelling at them and screaming at them and threatening them. Not only does it not make them want to talk to you, but it could hurt your actual information that you're receiving. It could be thrown out because they say it was coerced. So that is not how it works. Especially in the FBI, we are trained to empathy or get empathy with our targets, to let them know that they can trust us. Um, Maybe get them something to drink, get them something to eat, let them make a phone call, whatever we need to do to get them to be comfortable with us, and maybe even, to the point where they're willing to talk. That's what we want. And by yelling and screaming at somebody and pointing their finger at them is not the way to do it. Again, I understand why writers do this. It's that tension, that drama that we talked about trying to create. But in reality, that's not the way it works. And maybe you'll have a fresh look, when writing your particular story, if you show this somewhat trusting relationship being created, that's this rapport building between your subject and your FBI person. It makes it an exciting twist and not the same old cliche that you see so much on TV shows and movies and some books. All right. Oh, I love this one. And I know I got to get faster. Take a lot of time because we're on number 10 and I got 20 of them. But FBI senior executives are out in the field. I don't know how many times I've read a book and the person that is in the story, one of the main characters, is the FBI director. Like the FBI director is going to be out there investigating anything. And, we've seen the current FBI director get into a little bit of trouble because, you know, he is not, I'm trying to say this in a very uh, but he's out there when the people who are trying to do the job, the actual investigators, are are the ones that have that information, have it timely, and know when and at what point of the investigation they want to put that information out there. So usually FBI executives don't want to be anywhere near an active investigation. Their job is to work with Congress to get us the money that we need, to work with our law enforcement partners around the world to help facilitate what the FBI needs to do. Uh, so I always talk about this as plausible deniability. Most FBI senior executives don't want to be anywhere around. That way, if something goes wrong, they won't be the ones to blame. And I say that, in a laughing way, but most of them have been out of the field for so long that they may come through a crime scene, such as 9/11, to pat everyone on the back, tell them that they're doing a good job, but they let the agents do their work. And so, no, you're not going to find the director uh, uh, in real life. used to be able to say that with confidence, but you're not going to see them out in the field because they're going to let those agents do their job.
Maybe the current FBI director has seen too many badly researched television
I
shows.
think so.
Yeah,
I think so. If you think about it, um, if you've ever seen a conference, a press conference at a crime scene, there has been very few times that the FBI director would be at that conference. Maybe the special agent in charge of that particular field office, but never somebody from headquarters because they know that the person who knows that case the best, who's going to be able to use that press conference for the good of the investigation are the people who are there doing the work. Um, I could beat that
yeah,
forever.
that's fascinating. It really is. This is
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. FBI agents work for federal prosecutors. No. The FBI investigates, and the people from the United States Attorney's Office and DOJ prosecute. Now, again, we're so topsy-turvy on what's going on now, and I'm not going to get political, and it's not political. It's really me just stating the facts on some of our institutions. But basically, an FBI agent would investigate a case and then take that information, that evidence, to a prosecutor at the United States Attorney's Office, and then they would work together. The FBI agent would then assist the prosecutor. Now, of course, we would look for prosecutorial merit because you don't want to investigate a case that the attorney, federal attorney, federal prosecutor is not going to prosecute. So you do want to get a check. Yeah, if this is what's happening, I think this would be a great case, and I'd like to investigate it. But no one is telling the FBI agent what to do. Now, once it gets to a stage where it might go to trial, then the prosecutor is now in charge, and she may ask for additional information, additional work, additional uh, investigation to occur. But it is not a situation like in Billions where they were going around and leading the investigation and directing the FBI agents. That was one of those shows, I think it was like the second season where I was rolling my eyes thinking, that's not how it works. All right. The CIA hunts spies in the United States. No, the CIA works internationally. They are our spies. They have absolutely no law enforcement ability. And so when it comes to hunting down spies and working double agents and doing intelligence investigations, that's all the FBI. Here in the United States, that's the FBI. Now we do get information, from the CIA. They may have identified somebody overseas and they let us know the person's in the country. We are sharing information now. Of course, that was an issue before with the silos, but now things have opened up and, we are sharing information. But when it comes to hunting down spies in the United States, that's all the FBI. The Americans was an excellent, I loved that TV series. And one of my favorite things to watch when it comes to the CIA and the FBI working together was The Looming Tower, which I still think is on Hulu now that you can stream. And there's going to be a new FBI show on Tuesdays on CBS, and it's going to be called CIA. And I can't wait to see how wrong they get that because I know they're going to do it. I know they're going to do it wrong, and maybe even intentionally, but they're going to do it wrong. The FBI can wiretap and anybody at any time. No, I mean these are all court authorized. Um, Intrusions. This we take this very seriously. A person's constitutional rights. You have got to be able to go to a judge, a federal judge, and prove that you have used all other investigative techniques and tools, and you have proof that criminal activity has taken place but the only way that you can gather that information is through wiretaps and surreptitious cameras. And so, no, you cannot do it at any time, anywhere. It has to be court authorized. And those were two excellent movies that always had people gathering information through electronic surveillance. And I have a really good episode coming up next month with a tech agent who talks about his job being a professional burglar because they're breaking into people's cars and homes and businesses in order to install this equipment. It's really exciting. I was excited listening to it, and when it comes out, it should be really helpful for people writing about electronic surveillance. All right. Um, it's common for FBI agents to be in gun battles. Was the FBI with good old Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. For those of you who know that show very well, you're showing your age. But it just illustrates the fact that there have been agents killed in the line of duty in adversarial situations. However, it is not any as dangerous or nor does it happen as often as it would for somebody working for a police department. FBI agents are not necessarily street cops. Well, they're not. They're more like detectives. And so they're usually coming upon a scene after something has already happened and they're doing an investigation. Of course, there's many exceptions to that, but the daily gun battle the daily gun battles that an agent on the TV show FBI that's running now encounter. That's really not how it works. All right. I'm running through the our last 5 or 6 here. FBI agents fly around the world conducting investigations. Well, I can tell you that the FBI does not have the budget. We have a lead system. We have um, about 68 international offices, usually stationed agents, 2 or 3, at the most 5 agents stationed at U.S. embassies around the world. But these agents are not actively investigating cases. They are working closely with that country's security personnel and law enforcement personnel. Just like we're not going to allow somebody from, England or France or Japan to come into our country and conduct investigations and make arrests. We're not allowed to do that either. There is one exception, and it's called, it just went right out of my mind, territorial investigations. And this is a situation where Congress has allowed the FBI to investigate a case involving terrorism where an American citizen is either killed or kidnapped overseas. We can, again, working with our counterparts in that country, gather the information, actually make an arrest, and try that person, even if they're from another country, a foreigner from another country, we can bring them to the United States and try them and prosecute them and send them to prison here in the United States. But any other type of investigation that is conducted overseas that will enhance a case that we're working in this country has to be sent through a lead and worked by the law enforcement agency in that country. And again, FBI agents are not allowed to carry guns in other countries, and we don't allow their law enforcement agencies to carry guns in our country. We're doing well. Wind River and Mississippi burning. And FBI agents investigate murders. I have a great blog post on my on my website about when does the FBI investigate murders, and most of the time, everyone gets it wrong in books, TV, and movies. The FBI very seldom opens a murder investigation on their own. when you see the FBI involved in a murder investigation, most of the time it's a situation like in the missing persons case of Nancy Guthrie, where we're invited in to assist that local law enforcement. Exceptions would be if the murder occurred on federal property, if the murder occurred on a maritime, on a ship. If there's a murder on a cruise ship because they're in the middle of the ocean, that is under the FBI's jurisdiction. Another situation would be if uh, 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 a president or a senator or another federal agent was killed. The FBI would investigate that murder. So there are very strict situations where a murder is under the FBI's jurisdiction. And there are so many books, TV shows, and movies that I read and that I watch where they get it wrong. And I'm thinking to myself, like Twin Peaks. Why was that FBI agent? I can't think of his name right now. Why was he even there? Investigating Laura. Oh, I can't. I'm having a memory lapse, but why was he even there? It was not a local, simple local murder is not something that the FBI would have jurisdiction. If we are invited to assist, it's still a state case. And even if the FBI does a good majority of the work, it will still be prosecuted by the state, and the FBI agent would be deputized and become, participate as in that state trial, testifying and providing the evidence, but it still would be a state case. All right, we're moving along quickly. I do want to make sure we have enough time for questions, so we're almost there. We're almost there. Forensic examiner does all, collects evidence and investigates. And this just not is not true too. If you want to make your shows, there might be some script writers, so shows and your novels more authentic. You understand that a forensic examiner is a specialist. So somebody who may do blood spatter, is not the same person who's going to do DNA or fingerprint. They are specialists. And so definitely, they don't do it all. And there's a strict chain of custody. And, if you see those pictures or reading a book where, an agent is picking up evidence off the ground and they put it in a tissue and they put it in their pocket, that ain't the way it goes either. If they see evidence, they're going to call in an evidence response team to collect that information. And there's going to be a strict chain of custody as to the moment that evidence is gathered until it is presented as evidence in trial. And so this is really where you can mess up and have people, throwing your book across the room where you get some of these things wrong. So that's another cliche. Being a bomb tech is a dangerous job. Usually, most bomb techs are training other bomb techs, and they are in as I've been told, is a post boom situation where they're coming in and their technical expertise is looking at a bomb that has already been detonated and trying to figure out, what type of explosive was used, what was the vehicle that held the particular bomb. But there is very few cutting the green wire and cutting the red wire. And that's exactly when I stopped watching FBI show on CBS. When the first time they cut the green wire and the red wire, and I I wrote to the people, the showrunner who I know, and made some comment, and then the next season they did it again. I'm like, okay, well, we're gonna move on that. Most of the time, a lot of that stuff is automatic. Now they have the robots, and so bomb tech is they're still playing around with bomb. And explosives, but in most situation they have robots and stuff to help them detonate and figure out what a bomb is made of. All right, we're almost there. Bad guys plot revenge against the FBI agents who put them behind bars. Um, Great way to create tension and drama in your story, but it doesn't happen very often at all. What is strange, though, in many situations, they do plot revenge against prosecutors and judges, but very, very seldom again do they plot against the investigator. And that's because we have more personal um, a connection with the subjects. We're interviewing the subjects. We're talking with them in order to get them to talk to us. We may be, again, giving them that drink, bringing them, they're in jail, but maybe we'll bring them, in that Big Mac or French fries that they've wanted, that they haven't been able to eat for a while. Maybe we'll let them make a phone call real quick. We're working with them on a personal level of empathy because we're trying to build that rapport to get that information. So very, very seldom do bad guys plot against agents. Again, they look at the judges and the prosecutors more like the bad guy. It's still a way to bring tension and drama to your story, but I just want you to know it doesn't happen very often. In many situations, agents are still in contact and have, a cordial relationship with their subjects, even when they're in jail and even when they get out. I actually have an interview where two different episodes where I am on interviewing people that I investigated and who all went, who all went to prison, but came back and were on my show to talk about the case that I investigated. So, all right, here's the last one. Number 20, FBI agents are perfect and never get in trouble. And I put that one in here because I know that the FBI is not perfect. We're going through a stage right now where we're trying to make sure that the public understands, who we are and what we do. And I think that was one of the reasons that the FBI Agents Association, made me their G-Man Honors um, Distinguished Service Awardee because, I'm doing this work trying to get the real information out, not preaching, just showing the cases, telling the cases, and giving them a real life understanding of what we do. J. Edgar Hoover was our director for 48 years, um, and of course I. Against every egregious and illegal behavior that he did against our citizens and gathering information, especially with Martin Luther King. We had him in this TV show, our movie Breach. We had Hansen, who was one of the biggest spies who gave secrets to I think they were still the Soviets, but the Russians and had double spies killed. And above suspicion, that was an FBI agent who had an affair with his informant, and she got pregnant, and he killed and murdered her. So these are wild examples of when agents aren't perfect. But for the most part, I believe and truly believe that the FBI is there for the American public, and our job and our goal is to keep Americans safe. All right, there we go.
Jerri, thank
Any,
you. Yeah, thank you so much. This is like so much information. This is incredible. I'm so glad that we're recording this for our members so that they'll get a chance to see it again because there's a lot to dive into. Do you mind if I just read off a couple of quick questions from
yeah, I'm
in
going
the
to
chat?
stop the share so that I can see you. Okay.
Terrific. Hi.
Hi.
Um, okay, so one question is, based on what you've been discussing, is the show Without a Trace realistic in your estimation?
Yeah, that was a good show. I would love to. Another thing I should let everybody know is that every month I review a TV show or movie for teachable moments about the FBI, and I've done over 75 of them. And again, they're on my website. So if you're writing a book about a certain topic and you know there was a TV show, then you should, check to see if I've reviewed that show because I provide I just don't say whether I liked it or not, but I provide a teachable moment and give resources in order to provide more information about whatever topic they were on. Without a Trace is one of those TV shows. For the most part, it's a squad that is looking for missing persons, and a good part of it is accurate. Again, when you have an episodic show where the crime must be resolved in that hour, it is not going to be very plausible. We have shows like Task, which I had an image of. That was an HBO show where the whole series covered one case. Then you get a little bit more, there's more time for them to develop the investigation, for them to develop the characters, to show you the steps that are taken along the way. And so that's what you really should be looking for if you're going to rely on a TV show or a movie. Look for something that is more of a series. But I mean, there's lots of podcasts out there that are actually with law enforcement officers that will provide you much better information.
Um, so here's another question. It's a violation of U.S. Code Title 18, Section 1001 to knowingly make false or misleading statements to a federal agent. Is this true?
This is true. This is absolutely true. And it is used. It is used a lot when we know somebody has information and they're not providing it. It's a way to kind of poke them, to kind of encourage them to tell the truth. Um, uh, and so, yes, yeah, that is definitely, something that is used. Uh, I know lately people are not happy because usually you use it in addition to another criminal charge, and it has been used as the only charge for a person. And I think that's where people think it's an overreach. But it is against the law to lie to an FBI agent.
So all the TV shows notwithstanding, that one would be a big no-no, right?
Yeah,
Um,
don't do
okay,
that.
don't do that. Does the U.S. attorney have
Take the fifth.
does the U.S. attorney have their own investigators the way district attorney offices often have their own investigators in addition to precinct detectives?
No, no. Again, they're prosecuting a case, and if something needs to be investigated, it's one of the other federal agencies. It could be the FBI, it could be DEA, it could be Homeland Security. Um, we all investigate cases that the United States Attorney's Office and DOJ prosecutes. There is, if they do have somebody working for them, that person is maybe serving subpoenas or something in a civil matter. But usually the investigator is one of the federal law enforcement agencies.
And then I guess if this could be our last question, when you worked with X-Files and French, did you first consult with an entertainment lawyer? In other words, when you started working with them, what was your process as a writer to sort of and a consultant to get into that world?
Right. So I worked on Class of '09 and the other TV show. I can't even
Duster,
think of my,
Duster,
huh? Yeah,
Duster.
thank you, Duster.
Yeah,
Oh,
one of
my
my
mind is,
favorites, by the way. I
oh,
love that.
thank you. I
Oh,
love
I
that
loved that
show.
show. I love
And
that.
for those of you who don't know about Duster, Duster was created by J.J. Abrams and Latoya Morgan, and they decided to do a show about the first Black female agent. And that's how I wasn't the first. I think I was like the 23rd or something, but they found me, and that's how I became part of it. But I did have contracts with both, Warner Brothers and Disney and FX uh, to work on these shows. Again, I worked on these shows from the very beginning, and so I had to sign the NDAs and non. I'm doing it again. Non
Non-disclosure.
Thank
Disclosure
you.
agreement.
The D stands for non-disclosure an order. But I got to read every single script. Like a year or so before any of this stuff was filmed, I worked with the costume designers. I worked with the prop people, with the set designers. It was just so much fun and so exciting. And I was hoping it would be a situation for Dexter where they would get multiple seasons. But that didn't happen. But I love working on TV shows, and I've done some smaller ones too, because are just kind of one-off things, because it helps you learn your more writing skills. I've taken a break between writing novels. I'm back at it again. I think I mentioned I have one on um, submission right now with my agent, so got my fingers crossed on that. It's only been a month. Um, but I can learn. There are so many things that you can learn from watching TV shows and movies, and good stuff and bad stuff.
Um, Jerry, if you don't mind, I just want to ask one more question on behalf of a member. I know we're running a little late here, but um, he asked, would the FBI send two civilians with wires into a meeting on possible financial fraud with kidnapping indications?
Would they send?
Would they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, we do use confidential sources, cooperating witnesses, we also call them, to gather information. So if you are going to be going into a meeting as a citizen that you normally would go into, and you're going to you're going to be accessible to information you normally in your normal life would be privy to, then we can wire you up and send you in. We can't make you go into a situation where you shouldn't be or gather information that you did not have access to normally. That we would need a search warrant or a court order to do that. But if you're telling us I have a meeting with this guy every month and he tries to bribe me, and you are willing to wear a wire and go in that month, we definitely would utilize that opportunity.
Well, I think we're going to wrap it up because we could literally keep you here all night. This
Yes.
has been,
Thank you.
this has just been so incredible. I just want to tell everyone the name of your podcast again. It's the FBI Case File Review. And you can find that probably where most podcasts are. I know it's on Apple because I listened to one or two getting ready for this evening. And I'm going to dive back in because it's absolutely fascinating. This has been amazing. Your
Yes.
website is Jerry Williams, Jerri, Williams.com. Thank you again for joining us, Jerry. I'm glad we had a
Thank
full
you.
circle MWA New York moment. Good night.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you
It's been
so
so
much.
illuminating. These insights have been fascinating.
Why, thank you so much. It was exciting to have this opportunity. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Okay.
you again. Good night,
Bye.
everyone.
Good
Thank you.
night.